Cheryl Strayed stood at the edge of the Pacific Crest Trail as it overlooked a sea of deep green trees hundreds of feet below. From that height, she could see their tops swaying as a subtle breeze went past. She sat down to remove her boots. Strayed was on a journey, a voyage of sorts, and at this point she had hiked hundreds of miles on this trail. She went for days without seeing a soul, with no one for company but her great backpack, her giant backpack that she had nicknamed Monster. But she needed a break, and she sat down to remove her boots. They were too small, she discovered belatedly. She began to count the passing of miles with how bruised and beaten her feet looked, even how many toenails she had lost. As she began to delicately knead the sore flesh on her foot, her giant backpack toppled over. It hit her right boot in just the right way, which then skittered over the trail and flew over the edge of the mountain. She got to the edge to watch it just in time to watch it disappear into the forest canopy below. For a moment, she thought that this had to be a cosmic joke. That someone would pop out of the woods behind her and give her her boot back, or that time would reverse itself and she would see in slow motion the boot retrace its path from hundreds of feet below back up onto the trail. But of course it wouldn't. And so, clutching the orphan boot to her chest for a brief moment, she hitched it over the side with all of her might. It was one more thing that the trail would take from her. But what the trail took in comparison to what it gives is a tiny fraction. Wild, from Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail, is the name of Strayed's memoir. It has now been made into a movie, and it was released in December. I had purchased the book on the advice of a friend, and I am so glad that I did. It is an incredible message of perseverance in the face of obstacles, and today I'd like to explore some of the book. Now, fair warning, I will be talking about some of the things that Strayed discovers through her hike. So if you are absolutely allergic to spoilers, I'm not sure what to tell you. You may just want to hold your ears. I'll try not to give away too much. Strayed's journey begins in a hospital room. She is 23 and her mother is 45. Less than half a year before, her mother had been diagnosed with a virulent form of lung cancer. It spread more quickly than even the doctors imagined. Strayed is absolutely stunned by it, writing, "My mother died fast, but not all of a sudden. A slow burning when flames disappear to smoke and then smoke to air. She didn't have time to get skinny. She was altered but still fleshy when she died, the body of a woman among the living." Even though Strayed was married to a man named Paul, her mother was her anchor to the world. When her mom dies, she becomes unmoored. She desperately reaches out to her siblings, her stepfather, and to her husband, but the more she tries to grasp for them, the more they slip from her. She begins to medicate herself with heroin and casual sex with strangers. Her marriage comes apart. Despite her best efforts, her brother and sister want nothing to do with her. She feels utterly alone in the world. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh asks the provocative question in his book, No Mud, No Lotus. He asks the question of whether the Buddha ever suffered. When Han first became a Buddhist monk, he says he he did so because he thought the Buddha was a model of someone who was immune to suffering in the world. By being enlightened, he didn't feel hunger or heartache or regret or pain, Han reasoned. But the deeper Han went into his practice, he began to realize that this couldn't be so. Instead, he realized that it was precisely through the concrete experiences of pain and suffering that the Buddha was able to fashion his own response. Now, Cheryl Strayed is not Buddha, and I think that she is modest enough to resent the analogy. At least I hope she is. However, she is someone who takes the pain and the suffering of her journey and works to transform it. Her long hike is not about leaving her past behind, but rather, as the title of the book suggests, finding meaning precisely through those hardships. The idea of the trip itself comes to her kind of like a fluke. She had just filed for divorce with her husband. Tagging along with a friend, hoping to be distracted, she finds herself at the checkout of an REI store. She looks over at the metal rack with all the shiny book covers, and she sees one of those covers flash somewhat, and she reads the title, The Pacific Crest Trail, Volume 1, California. She buys it, and the idea is planted. She will hike the trail. Why, she doesn't exactly know. She just knows that she has to do it. Somewhere deep inside of her, she knows that she has to do it. It wells up inside, and she makes the decision to go. Within half a year, she is standing in the Mojave Desert at the beginning of the trail. At that moment, standing at the trail's mouth, she can hardly anticipate all of the dangers and hardships that are ahead of her. The trail itself winds its way from Mexico to Canada, a difficult journey for even the most experienced hiker. It goes to the snowy tops of the Sierras and through the driest, most exposed deserts. It is akin to a mountaineer going up Mount Everest. And so, Strayed, armed with almost no hiking experience, boots that are too small, and a backpack whose weight she can barely stand under, is an unlikely candidate for this momentous journey. But she is determined. Strayed is the first to admit that she was Pollyannish about the journey. She had a romantic notion that there would be lots of time to reflect on her life and to make great plans for her future. But that is not the reality of the trail. The reality of the trail, writes Strayed, is that you don't look miles ahead. You don't even look at what's around the next corner. Instead, with a 100-pound backpack and perhaps a scorching sun or a snowy, treacherous pass through the mountains, you look only at the next step. The physical suffering is so great that emotional reflection is an unaffordable luxury. It becomes a kind of meditation for Strayed, and in a strange way, its own solace. On the trail, there is no past to return to or future to contemplate. There is only the present moment of the next step. Strayed soon finds out that the tyranny of the present is not all that she has to worry over, though. While she was stooped over at a stream, using her water purifier to strain out impurities as she pumps the gurgling water into her bottle, a man comes jaunting down the trail. "You must be Cheryl Strayed," he exclaims. She thinks, "Indeed I am. Now who are you? A hunter? A hiker? Charles Manson, maybe?" It turns out that he had read her name on the trail register. He would be the first of many people, usually men, that she would meet along the trail, people who were making a similar journey. Almost always, these random people would be exceedingly kind. They give her food, directions, and they help her lighten her backpack. They warn her about weather and what to do if she confronts a bear, which she does. After her boots go flying over the mountain edge, these strangers even help her fashion shoes out of flip-flops and duct tape until she can find a new pair of boots. The book shows the unmitigated kindness of people, especially when they are joined together for some great task. Now, not all of her encounters with people will be so generous, but many of them are. And hiking the trail makes these people feel an almost immediate siblinghood. Strade's backpack, monster as she calls it, is a metaphor for her life in many ways. As she eats her food, discards what she doesn't need, loses her boots and other items, it begins to become lighter. Eventually, the tyranny of the next step begins to ease a bit, and she starts to get clarity about different parts of her life, especially as the journey of the trail is coming to an end. Strade's father had abandoned her family when she was only 5 or 6. For years, she had wondered why he couldn't have stayed. She writes this: "It amazed me every time, again and again and again, of all the wild things in this life, his failure to love me the way he should have had always been the wildest of them all. But on this one night, as I gazed out over the darkening land after 50-some nights on the Pacific Crest Trail, it occurred to me that I didn't need to be amazed by him anymore. There were so many other amazing things in this world." In that moment, writes Strade, "I felt fierce and humble and gathered up inside, like I just might be safe in this world too." Strade begins to change. She begins to transform as she goes from being a clueless and insecure hiker to being a confident and experienced one. Her internal terrain begins to shift. The most powerful moment in the novel for me is when she confronts what she did to her marriage. She had been unable to forgive herself for her infidelities and her drug use, the two things that ultimately demolished that relationship. And so in one passage, while sitting on a beach, sun glistening on the water, she writes her husband's name, her ex-husband's name, in the sand. And then she says this: "I'd done it so many times before, it was something of a habit. I'd done it for years. Every time I visited a beach after I fell in love with Paul when I was 19, whether we were together or not. But as I wrote his name now, I knew I was doing it for the last time. I didn't want to hurt him anymore or torment myself with all of the ways that I'd wronged him. What if I forgave myself?" I thought. "What if I forgave myself even if I'd done something that I shouldn't have? What if I was a liar and a cheat, and there was no excuse for what I'd done other than because it was what I wanted and needed at the time? What if I was sorry, but what if I could go back in time and there wouldn't be a thing that I would do differently? What if heroin taught me something? What if yes was the right answer instead of no? What if what made me do all those things that everyone thought I shouldn't have done is what got me here to this place in this moment? What if I was never redeemed for those things? What if I already was?" I'm not sure if I can boil this book or any book, especially a memoir, down to one message. That's like saying someone's life only means this thing or that thing. But if I had to choose a major theme for the book Wild, I would say that it is the theme of acceptance, of a deep and radical acceptance. And acceptance is a powerful and wild thing. Strayed is able to come to a place where she doesn't valorize her past wrongs, but she's also able to accept that she had done them, and she's able to accept the lessons and the life that she has gotten from doing them. She finds release from these past regrets and says yes to life with all of its beauty and its hardships. The poet Mary Oliver asks in her poem, "And what is it you would do with your one wild and precious life?" Strayed's answer is to accept all of the lessons that it has given, even if they have jagged and painful edges. Strayed doesn't learn this all at once, but rather again and again, with each passing mile, with each new day that dawns on the Pacific Crest Trail. My spiritual companions, it's a new day for us, too.